Hey everyone, it's Dr. Drums here. Today I'm going to be showing you how to replace a snare drum head. So I'm going to be replacing my snare drum batter head today, that's the top head. This is a 14-inch snare drum, which is probably the most common dimension. Sometimes you'll see a 13 or a 15-inch though. Most people recommend that you should replace the batter head, the top side of the drum, about once every 6 months. And then they say that you should replace the bottom side, the resonant head, about once every year. This one hasn't been replaced in years, so this one's really due for repair. And you can see that the coating that was on this skin of the batter head has worn off. It also does not sound very good without a lot of dampening, so I'll give you a little before demo of how this snare sounds. That's without the snare engaged. You can hear it has that really long decay, a wow sort of tinge. It's not very nice. So here's my replacement head. This one's a 14-inch. As I said, make sure that you check the dimensions, the diameter of your snare before you go and buy a new drum head to replace it. So step one is removing the old snare head. So first of all, I'm going to get my drum key, and you'll notice we have these lugs all the way around the drum. These help to tighten the different sides of the snare head to keep it all tuned and sounding nice. So we've got to remove all of them. What you want to do is go in a crisscross pattern. So we're going to start on one side, make sure you know where you started, then you go opposite, and you go to the next one of where you started, opposite, and so on and so forth. Okay, I'm going to loosen it with the drum key to start, and then I'll just remove the rest with my fingers and take off the outer rim here. Here we go. You'll notice after we've loosened it a bit, it should pop out of this. You don't need to take this all the way out. I like to leave it in the rim usually, but just make sure it's out of the holder here where it normally sits. Alright, so as you can see, I've loosened all the lugs with my fingers now. And the next thing I'm going to do is remove the rim. You can lift it up from the metal part, and I can just put that over to the side. Here we have our old head. That should just come off if you lift it now. And so yeah, you've got the old drum head off. Now, if you haven't tuned your head or taken it apart before, or in a while, you'll notice a lot of sawdust from your drumsticks sort of along the edges of the drum, maybe here, along the edges of the rim too. So it's a good idea to sort of remove that now while you've got the chance. You might want to grab a cloth and wipe it off. I'd probably recommend doing this outside because it can create quite a bit of a mess on the carpet. So I'm going to do that now. Alright, so I've removed the sawdust. I'm now going to move on to the next phase, which is putting on the new drum head. So, when you put on your new drum head, what you want to do is make sure that the logo on it is aligned where you want it to be. It won't affect the sound, but it will have an aesthetic difference. You know, you'll see that aligned in a certain place, and maybe you don't want it to be upside down. I tend to like to align it with the badge of the drum. So you notice this badge is the metal part on the front of the drum here. It'll have the logo, and that I get sort of pointing outwards away from me when I'm drumming, and I like to put the logo facing that on both the resonant and the batter side. So let's do that now. So you'll notice it fits on nice and snug. So that's on. Next step is to put over the rim once more. So you take the rim, make sure that it's aligned with these lug holders. So that'll go on. Then with your fingers, just put every lug in its holder. You don't need to twist it in right now, just rest it in there. Alright, so everything's resting in there. The next thing I'm going to do is in that same back and forth motion that I showed you before, I'm going to finger tight each of these lugs. So basically I'll grab one and I'll tighten it until I can't tighten it anymore with my fingers, in which case I would need a drum key, but I'm going to stop there. Alright, so I have all the lugs finger tight. You'll notice it's on. You may even see there's some creases there because it's not very tight yet. What we're going to do next is something called seating the drum head. Now, seating the drum head is the equivalent of when a guitarist pulls the strings back on their guitar. It's basically stretching the new head so that it will retain its tuning for longer. This isn't the most comfortable thing to do because it feels a bit like you're destroying the head, but trust me, the head can take it. Just make sure that when you're pressing, you're having a wide point of contact and you're giving a firm, even pressure. You only need to do this a couple times and then it will be seated. My hands like this. With some drum heads, you'll hear a few cracks when you push it in. And done. And the drum head is fine. It's not damaged at all. Alright, the next step is to take your drum key and we're going to start to tune this. So we're going to follow that same crisscross pattern. We're going to start in one place. Once we've tuned that, we're going to go opposite, then to the next one, then opposite, and so forth. We follow that star pattern because it keeps all the tuning even and consistent throughout. So I'm going to start now by giving this 1/2 turn per lug. Alright, I've given it 1/2 turn per lug. I can still see some creases there, so it's clearly not there yet. But even though we've done this, you may find that things are a bit uneven. It depends on how new the drum is and how the lugs worked when they were finger tight. But if you have a listen to this, it's not going to sound nice just yet. Okay, and with the snare. So you can hear a lot of rumble. We're not tight enough yet. Let's keep going. I'm going to go another 1/2 turn per lug. Alright, so it's looking a bit more like the right tightness now. What I should mention here is that every drummer likes their snare a little bit different. I tend to like it maybe in between, not too bright. I don't like to hear a wow from the tightness of the snare wires. But I also don't like it low and rumbly. You got to have that in between. So that's what I'm going for today. Here's what it sounds like without the snares on. Maybe a bit tight with the snares. Alright, what you'll hear now is I'm hearing a lot of different pitches in there. That's why it sort of doesn't sound like one note. It doesn't sound like do. It sounds like a lot of different notes at once. So we're going to try and even that out. The way you do that is you're going to put one finger in the center of the drum and you're going to tap along the edges of the drum where each lug is to hear for the differences in pitch. The point right now is to get them all uniform. So you want do, do, do all the way through. You want the same sound. This is kind of difficult to hear for, so you need to listen closely, see if you can hear any difference at all. And what you're listening for is it lower or is it higher pitch? So do we need to, if it's lower, do we need to tighten it more? Or if it's higher, do we need to loosen it more? Here we go. So that one's a little bit lower than that other one, so I'm going to tighten. Alright, so I've evened that up a little bit. I should mention you can get special drum keys that will help make this process a bit easier. I'm using a standard drum key, but you can use drum keys that are called torque drum keys, and they will click into place when the lugs reach the same tuning that you've set it at. Another option is the drum dial. They're sort of pressure sensors. You put them on the snare drum head itself. It will basically sense the pressure put on that head, so you can try and equalize the pressure between each lug. Let's have a listen. Notice how that's sounding a lot more like one sound now. So I'm just going to do a little bit more fine tuning, going through those same steps, bringing it up, bringing it down, making sure the lugs are the same tuning, and then I'll show you the finished product. But once you've reached a place that you're sort of happy with, there are two other things that you can do to tune your snare. So don't give up hope just yet if it's not sounding great. The first thing is you can loosen the snare wires on the bottom head. So we have this little dial here, and if I twist that, it'll change how tight the snare wires are attached to the bottom head. So if I go really loose on this one, what you'll hear is a lot of rumbling afterwards. Not very nice. If I go the opposite problem and I tighten it too much, you get those sort of higher frequencies afterwards. So if you've finally gotten to the end stage and you're still not really happy, it could be a problem of the resonant head. They sort of need to be tuned considering one another, and some people like their resonant head tighter than their batter head. Some people like it looser than their batter head. Some people like it exactly the same. I tend to like the resonant head a little bit tighter than the batter head. But you make your own choice, decide what you like, have a listen, and if you need to change something, that could be it. The final other test that you might want to do is just to check the tightness. So when you play the drum, once you're sort of happy with where it is, just make sure that you're happy with the amount of response, the amount of bounce you get. Are you able to drum roll on it? Does your stick naturally bounce? Or is it stopped because it's too loose? The final thing you can do to make your snare sounding a bit better is to add some dampening. So one thing people use is something called dampening rings. If you put them over, that'll change the sound by stopping a bit of the vibration, so you get a more clear and a shorter sound too. So here's without, and here's with. Hear that massive difference? I'm going to take the snare off and go without and with. Without, with. Huge difference, right? Some other options. There is something called Moongel. There's a few other products that are very similar to this, but basically this is a sort of gel substance you stick on the drum, and that does a pretty good job, depending on your placement, of dampening the head. And something that I like in particular, this is called a Big Fat Snare Drum. That's a particular brand. This one's actually Steve's Donut. That's why it's got a hole in the middle. And you just put these right on top of your drum, and they can drastically change the sound. Let's hear without and with the Big Fat Snare Drum. With. Huge difference. Some people also will combine their different dampening methods. For example, I like to put the Big Fat Snare Drum with the dampening ring for plenty of dampening. I go dampening ring beneath, Big Fat Snare Drum on top. Really muted sound there. So there you have it. That's how to tune a snare drum. This works for any drum. Just keep in mind, on the toms, it doesn't matter. The top head and the bottom head, they're the same. You can use the same kind of drum head if you want. With the snare, this bottom head, the resonant head, also called the snare side head, that is a different kind of head. It's a very thin kind of drum skin, so you need a very specialized kind of head for that. So don't go putting a batter head on the resonant side of your snare drum. Alright, so there you have it. Hope you enjoyed, and hopefully that's been helpful for you.